I'm 30 years old. My name is Sarah, and I have a son named Jake. He's 10. Genau, Moro, Pesawai. I'm married for the second time to a man named John. He's 38. We have a little girl, Lily, who's 1. We live in a quiet town, the kind where everyone knows everyone else's business. I met John about 6 years ago. I was 24, and he was 32. It sounds old-fashioned, but we actually met through a dating app. I liked his profile picture right away, and his bio was funny. We talked on the phone for weeks before we finally met up. When we did, it just clicked. We started dating pretty much immediately. John had never been married before, and he didn't have any kids. I'd been married before, but it didn't work out. I had Jake from that marriage, and even though that part of my life was difficult, I felt good with John. He made me laugh. He was a good listener, and he was great with Jake. John was always pretty open about his past. He told me he'd lived with a girlfriend for 4 years, but they never got engaged, and he ended things. He also told me about a girl he was in love with when he was really young, like 16 or 17. She was his first love, he said. He joined the army, and she didn't want to wait for him. That was really hard on him. His mom mentioned once that he never really forgot about her. I was naturally curious about this girl, but I didn't want to pry. John didn't bring her up much, but sometimes I catch a flicker of something in his eyes. A kind of wistful look. I didn't want to push him to talk about it if it was painful, and I wanted to focus on building our life together. One time, John invited Jake and me over to his apartment. I was excited to see where he lived. But when we walked in, I was kind of surprised. It was a bachelor pad. It needed a lot of work. The paint was peeling, the furniture was old and mismatched. I remember saying something like, "Wow, John, this place could use some TLC. Don't you have time to fix it up?" He just shrugged and said he'd lived with his parents for a long time and just never got around to it. Later, I heard from John's mom that he used to spend a lot of time with his friends, just hanging out, drinking beer, and not really focusing on fixing up the apartment. She also hinted that he used to have different girls over. Nothing serious. He never mentioned any of that to me. I was also a little surprised to find an old photograph of the girl from when he went to the army. He kept it as a memory. Oh. Then, one New Year's Eve, John and I went downtown to see the lights and enjoy the holiday atmosphere. It was crowded, and we were trying to keep Jake from getting lost. Suddenly, John just stopped dead in his tracks. He walked away from Jake and me, over to the edge of the crowd. I looked to see what he was staring at, and I realized he was watching a woman. She was with a man, presumably her husband. And I knew from John's stories that it was his first love. He stood there for a long time, just watching her. He looked sad. It felt really weird. Why was he standing apart from us, staring at this woman? He didn't say anything for several minutes. I felt so confused. Was he still in love with her? Did he care about her more than he cared about me? Maybe I was just being paranoid, but it just didn't feel right. I started overthinking, everything. Was that why he was never really happy with me? Was he always comparing me to her? I tried to talk to him about it. I asked him, John, do you still think about her? Do you still have feelings for her? He got defensive. Hi, this smells cowan too. He said, you're imagining things, Sarah. You're being ridiculous. But I wasn't so sure. He wasn't so sure. He did bring her up sometimes, and sometimes I still saw that wistful look in his eye. And then, John started talking to her brother on social media. He asked how she was doing, where she worked, who she was with. It made me incredibly uncomfortable. Why did he need to know all these details about her life? Even John's mom kept bringing her up. She'd say things like, John was so heartbroken when she left. He really loved her. Every time she said that, it made me feel invisible, like I didn't matter as much as this ghost from his past. I started feeling really lonely. I wanted John to be focused on us, on our family, on our future. But it felt like he was always looking back. John started to withdraw. She was still all pian. He wasn't as affectionate. He didn't smile as much. I kept wondering if he was thinking about her. I tried talking to him again. John, do you still love her? I asked. I still and cows, horse, into tow. He just repeated, you're imagining things, Sarah. I didn't know what to believe. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I felt like he was holding something back. I thought about our life together. I loved him, but it felt like he didn't love me the same way. Maybe he would never truly move on. Maybe he would never love me the way he loved her. I didn't know if I could live with that. I didn't want to feel like I was second best, like I was never enough. I wanted to feel loved and cherished, like I was the one he cared about most. After a lot of soul searching, I made a decision. I decided to have one last, honest conversation with John. I asked him, John, do you want to be with me, or do you wish you were back with her? He looked shocked. What are you talking about? I love you. I love you. But I didn't believe him anymore. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel like a priority. I knew it was time for me to make a change. I told John that I couldn't live like this anymore. I told him that I needed to be with someone who loved me completely, someone who was fully present in our relationship and our family. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I knew it was the right choice. I couldn't live in the shadow of his first love. I deserved to be with someone who loved me, and only me, with all his heart. If you like the story, please like and share.